I have a message for all the people of Earth. I am holding the Cell Games. Bring me your best fighters and fearless newcomers. Come and get me. Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle. Now let the games begin.
Bandai Namco.
What's good? I figured it would only be appropriate to include that special Cell Games announcement movie trailer, I guess so to speak, since we are doing pretty much a team filled with Z fighters, including Android 16 as well. But you know, it's kind of a good occasion to do this because the free-to-play Krillin unit is not only is he a very decent unit, he also does have at least the 120% leader stats for the Android Cell Saga on top of Key +3. So you're actually able to build a decent enough team revolving around the Z fighters that participated in the Cell game. So of course there's a lot of limitations and a lot of units that were omitted, like Tien and Yamcha and whatnot, but you know, Piccolo, for example, is the unit that obviously, you know, you want to include on there, but he does have restrictions in terms of not being able to transform because you do have to have a Namekian category ally on the team in order to initiate the active skill for that transformation or fusion with Kami. So unfortunately, that's kind of one of the limitations. Android 16, although he isn't really considered a Z fighter, you know, character, kind of have to include him on there because not only was a pretty pivotal character that pretty much allowed for the opportunity for Gohan to awaken into Super Saiyan 2, but in the game of Dokkan Battle you actually do need Android 16 as well to make the transformation for the LR Gohan a lot more easier, even though this is against the LR Cell, who is also within the Androids category. It just makes things a lot easier once you have an Android 16 ally on the team. So not only that, that guy is also a pretty good supporting type unit, defends pretty well as well. So overall, pretty solid unit. I don't think I've actually done a showcase for the free-to-play Krillin unit. So because of that, let's just go ahead and cover the stats for that unit at least. Again, this guy is the Android Cell Saga Category, Key +3, HP Attack and Defense increase 120%. So of course, might as well use this guy as the leaders. Ideally, to get the biggest boost, you would, for obvious reasons, you want to use the brand new LR Cell unit, but to run this theme Z Fighters type team, it kind of defeats the purpose of including LR Cell as leaders and the friend lead. So, you know, it just makes most sense to utilize the Krillin as the leaders. Again, you still get the 120% boost of stats from that. In terms of this guy's super attack, raises defense and causes supreme damage with a high chance of stunning the enemy, so very solid super attack ability there. Passive skill is also pretty interesting, attack and defense increase of 80%, plus an additional attack and defense increase of 7% per Android Cell Saga Category ally on the team. And depending on which slot he ends up attacking, his key adjustments take place as part of the passive skill as well. So if he's the first attacker in the turn, Key +4. If he's the second, it's Key +2. Also, finally, ability to launch an additional super attack when there's an Android category enemy. So a lot of built-in skill sets with this guy, and in terms of links, he's okay. He's got experienced fighters, Z fighters. You know, Z fighters is kind of like a give or take on what units have them, but experienced fighters is a pretty common enough link skill to where you shouldn't have too much problems fighting allies on building a team for. Shattering the limit is a pretty decent one. Obviously, it's a key boosting link. Shocking speed is also pretty common. I think rival duo and infighter is another one that's fairly common, but not as common. That's probably the best way to describe that. The only thing about this guy is I wish the stats were a little bit higher. The max I see on here is HP at 9,956, which is pretty decent. It's right at that, you know, 10,000 mark, but you know, it would have been nice to have a little bit higher stats overall. But regardless, I mean, the built-in skill sets this guy has is pretty solid overall. So I think he's a very good overall decent unit. Now again, I did say Piccolo does not have the ability to use the active skill because you do need another Namekian category unit on the team. links are a little bit iffy with certain rotations, but that's kind of like, you know, when you pretty much include everybody just to fit like a theme type setting, of course you're gonna run into that type of stuff. But the other thing to note is, of course, the Super Vegeta and Super Trunks, as well as the Super Saiyan Goku and Gohan. Most likely there is going to be an Extreme Z Awakening coming up, probably in part 2. So I'm really hoping for a nice little improvement on those guys. It would be very nice to be able to get, like, you know, at the very least, like 1 million in attack stats before the stacking even takes place. I don't know, that's a little bit, you know, I say that's a little bit too much to ask for, but we do have like free-to-play, you know, the, what was it, Jacket or Goku and Vegeta units that did get an EZA as well, and, you know, they produce like close to 1.3 million in attack stats, so it's not unreasonable to ask for it, but you know, we'll have to see what happens with that. And, you know, finally, of course, this team is going up against LR Cell, the newest Dokkan event. It only makes sense to, you know, run into this event and see how this team does overall. You know, with the Extreme Z Awakenings most likely happening for these guys, it would be very nice to be able to find out what the skill sets are. Now, these guys have, you know, the ability to either raise attack or defense. And that you can actually stack those to where the numbers can get up there, depending on, you know, how far the battle is going on for, basically. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see what their improvements are. Maybe they'll have a little bit of a higher increase overall in terms of like percentages. You know, we'll have to see with that. But yeah, I mean, part 2 should be pretty interesting. I think the only thing worth noting on top of that is a lot of speculation behind, you know, LR Super Saiyan Goku coming up as part 2 of the 300 million download celebration, which is centered around the Cell games. So, you know, I certainly covered a video on that and how I would love to see the, you know, Heart Virus Goku as the base SSR, and then transition to the, you know, Bye Guys LR type card. But, you know, we'll have to see what happens with that. Of course, the instant transmission Kamehameha would be really nice as a super attack to have as well. Based on how the super attack animations have been recently, I think that would look really good in Dokkan Battle now. So a lot of exciting stuff, and you know, we'll have to see how things are. I think what hurts this team setup right now is basically the 120% overall boost to stats like HP attack and defense. Of course, if it was the ideal, you know, leaders like the 150% or 170% leads, you know, the stats overall would be much higher. But I think this is, you know, decent enough to kind of see how they do overall, I guess. I'm still surprised they made this guy an intelligence type. I really did. It's a little bit crazy, but that is what it is. I thought at the very least it would end up being an agility type, you know, just because of the secondary leader skill that Gohan has, which is super agility types get that boost. So a little bit surprising, but it is what it is. Now, Krillin is pretty nice in terms of having that ability for additional super attacks based on fighting against Android-type enemies. Of course, if he's not, that's not really guaranteed, so you'll have to base that on the potential system. But either way, if you do run an Android Cell Saga type team setup, he is getting a 7% toward attack and defense for every ally that is part of that category. So, you know, his stats can definitely be improved quite a bit, and you know, we'll see how these two guys are with the EZAs. I mean, it's going to be pretty interesting, I think, to find out how these guys end up being. You know, it's just unfortunate, I guess, nowadays where they do require you to have a certain unit or certain type of unit in order to, you know, get the active skill or whatever some of the requirements are, but that kind of takes away a little bit from the flexibility of building teams. I mean, I get why they did certain things, like, you know, obviously the Gohan unit that requires Android 16. I mean, that from a historical standpoint, that makes perfect sense as to why. I mean, he only awakened into Super Saiyan 2 status because of, you know, the wise words from Android 16. But again, it almost feels like your team building options are a little bit more restricted. Now, you can bypass that by including another Android type unit or facing an Android type enemy, but that extends out to like 5 turns, you know. So I think if it was a little bit less requirement, it would have been much better. But you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's already done for, so there's not going to be any revisions anytime soon for that stuff. So we just kind of have to live with it, and hopefully with new categories or setups, you know, in the future, it'll make things a little bit more flexible in terms of team building. But you know, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. But you know, I figured it'd be interesting enough to cover this and see how Z fighters within the Cell Games setting would do on Dokkan Battle, since Krillin does have the 120% leader skills for the Android Cell Saga setup. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video. As always, I do appreciate you watching, and definitely stay tuned for the next one. We'll have some more coming up, hopefully. All right, I'll catch you guys later.